You keep saying you're stuck. Stuck in your career, stuck in your habits, stuck in your body, stuck in your mind. You speak about your life like it's a locked room. It's not. The door isn't locked. You're just too overstimulated to turn the handle. You don't have a motivation problem. You don't have a clarity problem. You don't even have a discipline problem. You have a dopamine addiction dressed up as modern living, and it is quietly erasing your ability to follow through. You wake up, and the first thing you touch is a screen. Before your feet hit the ground, your brain has already consumed more novelty than your ancestors saw in a week. Notifications, messages, news, reels, highlights of other people's lives, manufactured urgency, manufactured outrage, manufactured success. And then you expect yourself to sit down and do slow, boring, meaningful work. Of course you feel stuck. Your brain has been trained to sprint, not endure. You don't struggle with action. You struggle with silence. You struggle with monotony. You struggle with the absence of stimulation. You have conditioned yourself to need intensity just to feel normal. So when real work demands repetition, your nervous system interprets it as starvation, and you escape. You escape into scrolling, you escape into snacking, you escape into switching tasks, you escape into research, you escape into planning instead of executing. You call it being overwhelmed. It's not overwhelm, it's withdrawal. You are withdrawing from constant dopamine spikes. Every notification is a small hit. Every refresh is a small hit. Every new video is a small hit, and your brain adapts. This isn't philosophy. This is biology. The reward system in your brain is not built for infinite novelty. It was built for survival, for effort tied to reward. Hunt, effort, build, effort, protect, effort, then reward. Now it's reward without effort. Scroll, reward. Click, reward. Swipe, reward. And when reward comes without resistance, resistance becomes intolerable. That's why you can watch 3 hours of short-form content but can't read 10 pages of a book. That's why you can scroll endlessly but can't hold focus for 20 minutes. That's why you feel burned out before you've produced anything meaningful. You're not burned out from work. You're burned out from stimulation. Your nervous system is exhausted from consumption, not creation. And here's the part you don't want to hear. You like it. You like the stimulation. You like the escape. You like the illusion of progress when you watch other people progress. It feels productive to consume productivity content. It feels like movement, but it's sedation. You are sedating your ambition with constant input. You tell yourself you need inspiration before you start, so you watch another video. You tell yourself you need clarity before you commit, so you scroll another thread. You tell yourself you need the perfect plan, so you open another tab. And by the end of the day, you've done nothing but stimulate yourself into paralysis. Overstimulation destroys follow-through because follow-through requires boredom tolerance. It requires sitting in the same task when the novelty is gone. It requires doing the second hour when the excitement of starting has faded. It requires continuing when the dopamine drops. But you never trained that muscle. You trained the opposite. You trained your brain to abandon anything that doesn't immediately reward you, and then you wonder why you quit. Look at your pattern honestly. You start strong, you feel excited, you announce your goal, you feel a surge, and then when the task becomes repetitive, you reach for your phone. You don't even notice it. It's automatic. Your thumb moves before your mind does. That is not weakness. That is conditioning. But conditioning does not absolve responsibility because you built it. You built the environment. You allowed the notifications. You kept the apps. You chose the constant noise. You designed a life where silence feels threatening. You say you want depth, but you've engineered distraction. You say you want mastery, but you've engineered novelty. You say you want transformation, but you've engineered comfort. Constant stimulation is comfort disguised as engagement. It keeps you busy but never progressing. And comfort is not neutral. Comfort erodes edge. Comfort dulls ambition. Comfort numbs dissatisfaction just enough that you tolerate mediocrity. You don't feel the urgency to change because you are constantly entertained. In another era, boredom forced innovation. When Andrew Carnegie was building his empire, there were no endless streams of distraction. When Henry Ford obsessed over efficiency, there were no notifications interrupting deep work. When Thomas Edison failed thousands of times, there was no infinite feed to escape into when it became frustrating. They had to sit in the problem. You can't sit in anything. 5 minutes of difficulty and you're reaching for relief. You have built a reflex to escape, and every escape weakens your identity. Because identity is not formed in peaks, it is formed in sustained repetition. Overstimulation fractures repetition. It chops your attention into fragments so small that nothing substantial can grow. You want big outcomes with a fragmented mind. It doesn't work. A scattered mind produces scattered results. A distracted identity produces inconsistent behavior, and inconsistency destroys self-trust. This is the real cost, not productivity, self-trust. Every time you say you'll focus and then scroll, you cast a vote against your own word. Every time you plan and then escape into stimulation, you teach yourself that your commitments are optional. You don't feel stuck, you feel unreliable to yourself, and that erodes confidence faster than failure ever could. Failure at least implies effort. Overstimulation implies avoidance. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of being bored long enough to succeed. Because success, real success, is monotonous. It is repetitive. It is unglamorous. It is often invisible. There are no dopamine spikes in disciplined consistency. There is no applause for the 10th identical workout. There is no highlight reel for the 50th day of writing. There is just repetition. And repetition feels empty to a brain addicted to stimulation. So you abandon it. You abandon the gym after the novelty fades. You abandon the business after the excitement cools. You abandon the routine when it becomes predictable. You tell yourself it's not working. It was working. You just stopped, not because it failed, but because it bored you. Overstimulation makes steady progress feel invisible. You crave intensity, but growth is quiet. You crave spikes, but mastery is flat. You crave emotion, but discipline is neutral. And until you recalibrate your nervous system, you will continue mistaking calm progress for stagnation. You are not stuck, you are desensitized. Your baseline is too high. Normal life feels dull because you flooded your system with artificial peaks. You need louder music, faster edits, shorter videos, more extreme content, more dramatic stories. And then you expect a simple, slow task to compete with that. It won't, it can't, and it shouldn't. Because meaningful work is not entertainment, it is construction. It is laying one brick at a time when no one is watching. But construction requires focus, and focus requires the absence of constant reward. This is why follow-through is dying in your life. Not because you lack potential, not because you lack intelligence, but because you lack deprivation. You have removed all friction from consumption and all stimulation from effort. You reversed the equation. You made distraction easy and discipline uncomfortable. And then you're surprised that your behavior follows the path of least resistance. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your environment. And your environment is engineered for addiction. Look at your day. How many inputs before you produce a single output? How many scrolls before a single page written? How many videos before a single action taken? You are consuming 10 times more than you are creating. That imbalance alone will make you feel powerless. Creation builds agency. Consumption builds passivity. And a passive mind feels stuck. The solution is not motivation, it is reduction. Reduction of noise, reduction of inputs, reduction of novelty. You need to lower your dopamine baseline so ordinary work feels tolerable again. You need silence. You need boredom. You need moments where nothing is happening and you don't reach for a device. You need to feel the itch to escape and not move. That is the beginning of regaining control. Because the moment you can sit in boredom without flinching, you reclaim authority over your impulses. And authority over impulses is the foundation of discipline. Discipline is not intensity, it is restraint. Restraint from unnecessary stimulation. Restraint from constant checking. Restraint from reacting to every impulse. When you remove excess stimulation, something uncomfortable happens. You feel restless. You feel empty. You feel behind. You feel exposed. Good. That's your nervous system recalibrating. That's your brain learning to operate without constant sugar. That's the withdrawal phase. Most people never get past it. They try for a day, they feel uneasy, they go back to scrolling, and then they say nothing works. It worked. You just didn't endure the reset. Follow-through is not built in excitement. It is built in quiet repetition. And quiet repetition becomes possible only when your brain is not screaming for novelty. You want to feel driven again? Stop flooding yourself with cheap reward. You want to finish what you start? Make distraction harder than effort. Turn off notifications. Delete the apps that fracture your attention. Create blocks of time where input is impossible. Not because it's trendy, because your identity depends on it. You cannot build a disciplined self inside a chaotic environment. You cannot cultivate depth in a culture of distraction without deliberate resistance. This is war, not dramatic war, silent war. War against your impulses, war against your conditioning, war against the design of modern platforms that profit from your fragmentation. You think you're weak? You're conditioned. But conditioning can be reversed, not through inspiration, through subtraction. Remove the noise, remove the excess, remove the constant reward, and watch what happens. At first, nothing. Then discomfort, then clarity, then focus, then momentum, and then something you haven't felt in a long time, control. When you can work without needing stimulation, when you can continue without needing validation, when you can sit in repetition without craving novelty, you become dangerous. Because now your effort is no longer dependent on emotion. Now your progress is no longer dependent on excitement. Now your follow-through is not fragile, it is structural. And structure is what builds empires. Structure is what built industries. Structure is what allowed men like Ford and Carnegie to outlast competition that had equal talent but less endurance. They didn't win because they were constantly inspired. They won because they could sustain focus, sustain effort, sustain repetition. You want to stop feeling stuck? Stop feeding the addiction that keeps you fragmented. You don't need a new strategy. You need a quieter life. Not externally quieter, internally quieter. Less input, more output. Less reaction, more intention. Less stimulation, more structure. You are not stuck. You are overstimulated. And until you confront that honestly, you will continue mistaking your addiction for circumstance. The door isn't locked. Your hands are just too busy scrolling to open it. Then understand this clearly. No one is coming to detox your life for you. No one is going to lower the noise, silence the notifications, or protect your focus. The world benefits from your distraction. Platforms profit from your fragmentation. Weak environments reward your inconsistency. And every day you stay overstimulated, you become easier to control. You say you want freedom. Freedom begins with attention. If you cannot direct your focus, you do not own your life. You are not stuck behind circumstance. You are buried under noise. And the longer you tolerate it, the more your standards decay, the more your ambition dulls, the more your identity weakens. There will be no dramatic turning point, no cinematic breakthrough, just a decision, a quiet one, to remove what weakens you, to sit in boredom without escape, to rebuild your tolerance for repetition, to choose depth over dopamine. Because once you reclaim your attention, everything changes. Your focus sharpens, your execution stabilizes, your follow-through hardens. And when follow-through hardens, results become inevitable. You are not stuck. You are overstimulated. Lower the noise or stay average. There is no middle ground. If this exposed something in you, don't scroll away from it. Like the video, not for approval, but as a commitment to raising your standards. Comment what you're removing from your life starting today. Make it public. Make it real. Share this with someone who keeps saying they're stuck. And subscribe only if you're ready to build a mind that isn't controlled by noise.